Hey everybody, Canadian Operator here, and today I've got my Tikka T3x with me. It's the T3x Lite actually, and it's been a rifle that I've really been enjoying quite a lot. If you watched from when the channel was created, I did have some shorts on there talking about basically building out the rifle, and by that I mean basically just putting the scope and the rail on top of it. And honestly, that's all it really took. I'm not going to be doing really any other modifications to this particular rifle. But I want to talk about it a little bit today because I think a lot of you showed a lot of interest in it in previous videos, and I think it deserves its time in the spotlight. So let's talk about it. So a little bit of history on the Tikka T3x Lite and just on Tikka in general. These are made in Finland, and they're actually manufactured by a company called Sako or Sako. And if you know anything about the gentleman nicknamed the White Death from Finland, then you might know that these are exceptionally accurate rifles. In fact, they're so accurate that they come out of the factory with a 1 MOA guarantee. And that means that you're going to be shooting, even with a basic optic on top, sub 1 MOA, meaning sub 1 minute of angle, otherwise known as shooting basically 1-inch groups at about 100 meters or 100 yards away. That is really impressive for a rifle just coming out of the factory without really doing anything with the barrel, the trigger, or anything else for that matter. So the fact that you're able to get that accuracy right from the factory really diminishes the amount of work that you're going to need to do to get this thing on target, other than of course just sighting in whatever scope you happen to put on top. So you might be considering the T3x Lite or perhaps the T3 version of this firearm, and there are a couple of differences. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen the T3 circulating really anywhere in Canada, not at any of the retail shops, nor any of the secondary market here. If you live in the United States or somewhere else around the world, then it's possible that you might see that on the secondary market. And if that's the case, then let me just tell you a few of the differences. There's not really too many, but maybe it'll make a difference for you. So let's talk about that first. First and foremost is the buttstock here, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear this, but you can definitely hear a little bit of dampening there. And the reason for that is that they've got some foam inside here. And I think their logic here is that if you're out and you're hunting and you're moving about, you want to make as little noise as possible. And certainly, most certainly, if you're hunting, you'd probably be in a blind, or you'd probably be set up somewhere, so you probably wouldn't be running and gunning after a deer. But that being said, it's definitely nice, at least for the purposes of aesthetics, to not have this feel like the plastic that it actually is. It's actually really well made, and it does feel like a high-grade plastic, but the fact that it is insulated inside definitely helps. And that is one of the differences between the T3 and the T3X. Now, there are going to be a couple of other differences, namely we've got the ejection port, which I should mention is completely empty. We don't have any ammunition near any firearms when we're doing firearms videos, and when we're doing ammunition videos, all of the firearms are locked up. So always get to get into that safe practice. But in any case, the other difference is that on the T3X, and the sub-variants like the Lite and the Ultralight, we do have a larger ejection port here, so a little bit more on the side of reliability. And not that the T3 was unreliable, but it's just nice to have that little extra space so that we can always reliably eject our cartridges and be able to get on target for the next shot. One of the other differences too is that we've moved now from an aluminum lug, or recoil lug I should say, to a steel recoil lug. And I think that's practically not going to be making too much of a difference, but it is definitely nice to see moving to a more sturdier material, even on a fairly light rifle like this. And other than that, I think the only difference is that the rear of the bolt here is going to be made of metal as opposed to polymer or plastic. And again, that's just a materials change. It's definitely nice to see that we have some more robust and reliable materials. But practically, from day-to-day shooting, I don't think that it's going to make a huge difference. So do with that information as you will. Now, I know I've been playing a little bit with the action here, but I honestly can't help myself because it is so incredibly smooth. And I think I've actually convinced one of my friends who was over at my place recently to pick one of these up just by him handling this and just seeing how it moves. It is exceptionally smooth, and I've got to say, tolerances that Tikka has employed here for their manufacturing and their machining are second to none. And I'm not just saying that because I want to be cheesy and that's actually their catchphrase or their tagline or whatever, but there's really a lot of truth in that. I have never handled a firearm, bolt action or otherwise, that just had such a smooth action. In fact, let me show you just how smooth this is. Like, that is buttery buttery smooth. It's just actually really mental how smooth that is, and maybe I don't know if that's the right word to use there, but it's exceptionally smooth, and it's a very visceral feeling. It's something that I've learned to enjoy in firearms that are more manual in nature. I just love being able to get in there and just handle these firearms and at least feel like I'm in more control of the firearm. And that's not to, shit on semi-automatic firearms or any other types of actions, because every firearm has a place in my heart. But I gotta tell you, bolt action, especially a really good one like this, if you haven't tried one yet, you're going to be singing a different tune once you do, especially once you try something of higher quality like this. Now, I mentioned quality a lot, and to be honest, it's definitely there. But the price is also not very high. Now, because we're a wife-friendly channel, fellas, we're not going to be discussing the price here. Of course, you can check that out online, whatever your local retailer might be offering these at. I know they have some information on the Tikka website as well. However, I want to say that the price-to-performance ratio on this thing is absolutely absurd. You are getting so much performance for your dollar that you'd be pretty crazy not to get one of these, unless you've already owned one, and then I'd say you probably still wouldn't go wrong getting another. Let's talk about the barrel next. The barrel here is going to be a nice 22.5-inch barrel, at least on this 308 Winchester model. We don't have any kind of device on the end of the barrel here. And for some of you, that might be a little upsetting, but to be honest with you, yeah, the flash is there and the recoil has a little bit of a kick, but then again, it's a 308. It's not going to be anything like a 300 Win Mag or anything along those lines. So really, you're not getting any excuses here to put anything on the end here, especially if you are actively seeking a light rifle, which is exactly what this thing is. This is the light version of the T3X, and so there have been some changes made based on that, as opposed to if you were going for something like a tactical look like the Tact A1, then yeah, you're going to be getting the really tactical shit. You're going to be getting, a little bit of a heavier rifle. You're going to be getting a muzzle device and so on. This rifle is designed to be extraordinarily light, easy to handle, and easy to transport, and those things it most certainly is. If you are so inclined, even though you bought the light version, you can take this to a gunsmith and have some threads put on there if you want a muzzle brake or a flash hider or something like that. Of course, if you want a silencer at the end of that, you're kind of out of luck, because in Canada, silencers are not legal. I'm really not sure why, but in the United States, if you happen to have one of these rifles, certainly you can put a silencer on that, and that's going to make you even more stealthy when you're out hunting, which is great. Or maybe you just want the tactical look and you want to show it off to your friends. Either way, you can certainly do that, but it doesn't come with a muzzle device out of the factory. So as I mentioned, this one in particular here is chambered in the 308 Winchester. But we do also have this rifle coming in a variety of different flavors, including the 223 Remington, the 6.5 Creedmoor. I do believe it comes in one other one. I'll put that in the description down below, but I know the most popular ones are going to be the 308, the 6.5, and the 223, probably the least popular of the bunch, because in some places in Canada, you can't even hunt with a 223, depends on where you are. And the reason why I chose the 308 over the 6.5 Creedmoor is both the price and the availability of ammunition. In my local area, the availability of 6.5 Creedmoor is a little bit more restrictive than the older 308 cartridge. At least I think it's a little bit older. It's been around for quite a long time. And the 308 is typically a little bit cheaper. I can usually get them about, well, I guess we're not going to discuss the price, but I'd say it's just it's a very reasonable price, very, very close to that what I pay for my 5.56 ammunition for my Tavor, which is actually just laying over there. Now, whether you choose the 308 or the 6.5 is really up to you. They're both fairly intermediate cartridges, and they're going to be both very good for hunting. I'm not, very experienced with hunting, so I can't really give you too much details on that. But whatever is available to you and whatever is comfortable for you is really what you should go for. One of the other things that I would mention is that if you're picking up any kind of rifle, that you are looking for the price and the availability of that ammunition, because there's really no point in getting yourself a beautiful rifle like this if you just can't get any ammo for it. All right, so let's talk about the ergonomics of this rifle. As I've mentioned before, it is exceptionally light. Now, any direction that I point this firearm in today is going to be a safe direction. There is nobody in that direction here. In fact, there's nobody else in the room but me. And again, as a disclaimer, whenever we're working with firearms, we always make sure that they are unloaded, which is the case. We don't have a magazine in there, and all of our ammunition is locked up, and it's vice versa for when we're looking at ammunition. All of our firearms are locked up as well, so that way we never introduce firearms and ammunition together at the same time. Let's go ahead and lock the action, and I can tell you just from shouldering this thing, it just feels great. But just looking through this, even with my hat on, this feels really great. Now you guys may have noticed that my rings are the high rings. These are the Vortex Pro Series, I do believe, which I ended up getting with this Vortex 4-16 by 44 scope, which if you're interested, we'll do a review on at a future date. But they are a higher mount, and the reason for that is because, as you can see there, we want to make sure that the bell of the scope here is sufficiently above where the barrel is. We don't want any chance of that touching, and of course putting this cap on top is going to introduce a couple of millimeters to the scope as well. And so we want to make sure that we've got ample space down here so that the bell of the scope or the optic isn't touching here. And I wasn't able to achieve that with anything but basically I think the second highest. This was high, and they had an extra high beyond that, I believe, as well, with those specific rings. So that's why I've got it higher. I'm a bit of a bigger guy as well, so this is why I do enjoy having this a little higher. And once we tuck that butt pad in, I can just tilt my head, and even with my hat on, I can get a really good sight picture there. Now, generally speaking, I shoot with my hat backwards like I'm trying to be some kind of cool kid in high school, because it definitely moves this kind of out of the way and allows me to see a little bit better. But even with my hat on, I'm able to get a really good sight picture through the scope, and the rifle doesn't really feel too top heavy. To be honest with you, most of the weight of the that's making it kind of uncomfortable is actually coming from the scope, because it's a rather large scope, and we've got some steel scope rings and quite a lot of glass in this larger scope. In terms of ergonomics all the way around, we do have some nice texturing on the grip. I'm not sure if you're able to see that too well there. So we've got a double panel. It's not like a wraparound like you see on some different models out there, but we do also have a nice texturing up here on the front. And this is also a 2-panel texture, so if I were to flip that over, and you can see that on the other side, we have exactly the same thing. So in terms of ergonomics from a grip standpoint, it definitely feels really nice. Now, one of the things that I failed to mention here, let me just put this down for a second, so I'm not swinging it around. Actually, in fact, let me just go ahead and point this to you this way. So the buttstock on here is really, really nice. This is all rubber back here, and it is fairly thick. I'd say that's probably about 3/4 of an inch or so, and there's definitely a little bit of give to that. So it's really, really comfy. If you're, if you've just got a t-shirt on, even, that's totally fine. Even if you've got a sweater, that's even better. And again, this is just a 308, so you're not going to have a lot of recoil in here. There's going to be a little bit, obviously, because it's an intermediate cartridge, but you're not going to have a lot. That nice recoil pad there, as well as the dampening inside of the stock, is going to do a really good job at absorbing a lot of that. But again, really not a whole lot of recoil to speak of, and you can comfortably shoot this thing all day if you're going out hunting. Or maybe just shooting at the range. Now, in terms of the action, as I said, the action is super smooth, very short throw on the lever here, and the trigger is exceptional out of the factory. I'll see if I can move the microphone a little bit closer so that you guys can hear what the trigger sounds like, but from here, let me just show you what it looks like. It's very, very light. There we go. And there's maybe 1 millimeter between the wall and the reset. Other than that, there's very little, if there's actually no uptake whatsoever, and it just feels super nice, super crisp, very responsive, and you can adjust the trigger to have it down to about 1 or 2 pounds. From the factory, it comes in at about 3 pounds. We'll test it with the meter here in just a second, but it's just incredibly nice. Now, I'm pulling all the way back, and then that reset is, again, there's not really much of a reset there to speak of, but it's only about maybe 1 millimeter, if that. It is an extremely precise trigger. It just feels really, really great. Let's go ahead and cock this, and I want to take the meter out and actually see what it is. Now, again, from the factory, it's telling us that it is 3 pounds. You can change a little part in there in the trigger group from a number of different third-party manufacturers, which will allow you to take that trigger down to 1 or 2 pounds. But to be honest, for hunting, I think a 3-pound trigger is absolutely fine. I'll be right back with that trigger gauge, and let's see what we actually get on the gauge. That 3 pounds 5 ounces is really, really close to the 3 pounds that we're getting claimed from the factory. And honestly, I wouldn't even upgrade this thing because it's just so incredibly crisp and easy to use. And if it's anything lighter than that, then to be honest, I would actually feel like that might be a bit of a safety issue. At least that's just from my point of view. If you're used to a feather light trigger and you're used to, 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, then by all means, you still have the option to do that. While we're talking about customizability, I want to tell you about one of the other options here that you have on the Tikka T3x Lite, because it's definitely nice to have. Now, it's not a make or break for me, but when I found out about it, it was definitely a very nice thing to hear, considering that if you've seen my Ruger 1022 video, I was really happy about the fact that that thing can be customized to Kingdom Come. So it's really nice whether you're doing this for aesthetic purposes, or comfort purposes, or for other practical reasons. It's definitely nice that Tikka included these interchangeable grips. All you need to do is just unscrew that there at the bottom and these grips will come off, and you can get different grip profiles. So if you're a shooter that enjoys a more swept grip like this, then, well, you're not gonna have to change it. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more straightforward, like a straight pistol grip, then yes, you will have options for that, and Tikka does offer them on their website. I definitely think that's something nice to include on a rifle such as this, especially since a lot of its competitors don't offer these kinds of similar choices. So always nice to see that, and always nice to see how we can customize our firearms to suit our needs. Instead of just using them as tools, we can obviously have other reasons to make them our own. So that's going to conclude the tabletop portion of the review. I'm going to now take this thing out in the future, so we're going to time travel a little bit and meet up with my buddy Sammy and take this thing out to the range. I want to shoot some groups with it with my ammo, and I only have one ammo that I'm using at the moment since that's kind of what I like the most, but it is going to be the PMC Bronze 308 Winchester, which again I'm not going to take out and show you because we've got firearms on the table. But that is the one that I use, and honestly I found it to be very reliable, fairly affordable as well. Like I said, not that much more expensive than what I pay for my 5.56 brass, also from PMC. I've just never had an issue with them. It's been a very reliable ammunition for me, and I'd like to know in the comments down below what has been a reliable ammunition for you, because obviously there's more than just PMC available out there. There's Federal, and there's a bunch of other names that are out there. Not that I can just say off the top of my head, because honestly I don't have too much experience with many other manufacturers. Mostly deal with PMC for my larger size stuff and CCI for my 22s. So let me know down in the comments what you like to shoot and whether you have one of these. Are you considering getting one? And we'll talk about it there. In the meantime, let's take this thing out to the range, see how it shoots, and then we'll come back to the tabletop for a conclusion.
Hey everybody, editing operator here. So yeah, check out this target. It's not too bad. There are two groups of 3 here. The first group is not that great. I was having some trouble controlling my breathing, so there's 1 and 2 there, and then there was a third straggler there, and then the second group there was actually pretty good. They were pretty much all on top of each other and touching. Overall, I'd say this rifle is extremely accurate.
Well, that's going to do it for me. I hope you found this video helpful and enjoyable in some way. My goal wasn't necessarily just to sell you on the Tikka, but just to give you enough information about it so that you can make the decision for yourself. Now, for me, I'm not really a big hunter or anything like that. I mostly take this thing out to the range, and I take every opportunity that I can to get out to an outdoor range with some of my friends who have memberships there, since we do have options to shoot 50, 75, and 100 meters. Obviously, as you saw, the range that I was at, I'm only able to shoot anywhere between 15 and 25 meters. And in that case, it's definitely a little restrictive and doesn't really show off how much this thing can really shine. But that being said, I hope that you got something from this. Do let me know in the comments below whether you've decided to pick one of these up, or maybe you've owned one for a long time and you have something to add. that would definitely be a welcome addition to the comments, and I would love to talk to you guys about it more there. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future, although I have a feeling that we're going to be reviewing the Tavor X95 in 5.56 very soon, as my wife and I are planning to go out to the range in a couple of weeks again to have a look at that one. So until then, I'll see you next time. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.